everyone, my name is Bridget and welcome to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be talking about how to research an animal. Now this may seem like a very simple topic of discussion, and it is. You would think that this would be more of a self-explanatory kind of thing, but honestly, I've gotten several questions from people on how I find the information that I get on how to care for my animals, questions on different people that they could talk to, advice that I can give them to prepare them for their animals, and so I thought that I would just kind of compile a list of tips that I have for researching an animal and share that with you guys. There are a lot of people who aren't aware of just how many resources there are out there on caring for animals of all types and species, so I definitely think this video could help some of you guys out. Now when it comes to researching an animal, it is extremely important to research several different sources. You won't really be able to provide the absolute best care for that animal if you read only one article or watch only one video or listen to only one person in regards to that animal's care. So I'm going to be discussing the different resources that you can use when researching an animal, and then I'm also going to share how I personally do my research. To start this discussion, I'm going to be talking about resources that you should not trust and people that you should not listen to. Do not trust pet stores, people who have never kept the animal, people who have only kept the animal for a few weeks or months, people who are rehoming the animal on things like Craigslist or Kijiji, because they may tell you how to care for the animal and you just need to politely dismiss that care information and do your own research. And also mass breeders who have so many animals in their facility that it just risks poor care and very poor information. And the reason I mention pet stores is because a lot of pet stores, especially those that are chain pet stores, have very outdated information and sometimes can provide the wrong information entirely. So my number one tip in this entire video is going to be researching several different resources in regards to the animal that you want to keep. So now let's just talk about the different resources that you can use for researching your animal. Number one is internet sources. This can be a combination of websites, breeder websites, forums, YouTube videos, or Facebook pages. There are several different websites that you could use, but when it does come to websites, it is more important to use more credible sources rather than just a couple of simple Google pages that have only basic information. You want to try and go for websites that give a lot more detail on the animal. Breeder websites are really nice because you get to see the different colorations and morphs. You can learn how the animals interact with humans. You can learn their breeding behavior, how they grow and how they change, just all things like that. Now, responsible breeders will keep the animals in the correct husbandry, but be aware that a breeding project is much different than an at-home pet. The animals in a breeding program will often have a lot less handling experience, and they'll also have a different enclosure setup than the one that you would provide for them at home. And as I mentioned before, watch out for those mass breeders. Forums are pretty great at gathering general information, as the information provided on forums come from people who have experience with that animal, but you're gonna find a lot of varying opinions as well. So just be mindful of that and try to take it with a grain of salt and use your own judgment. YouTube, of course, has several videos on there on care guides and different behavior that you could see from the animal, and just general experience from the person who's filming the videos. You can also get a really good feel for the enclosure setup that they require and just any other general information like that. And then finally, Facebook is a really good way to see how other people care for their animals and to just get any general questions answered anytime that you're there. So the second resource for research is paper sources. This can be a combination of library books, encyclopedias, or magazines. These sources are definitely going to be your most credible sources, but you need to make sure you're looking into more recent publications, because a lot of more scientific books from, let's say, 30 to 40 years ago are going to have very outdated care information. Now, people often forget about the library because there's so much information that you can easily find just on the internet, but don't forget about paper, y'all. Paper is still very important. The library is still a magical place. And honestly, it's kind of easier to find more correct information at the library, especially from more scholarly sources about the animal that you're researching. Our third resource for research are television shows. Now, I mean, most of you should already know who Steve Irwin was. And if you don't, I highly suggest you just leave my video right now and go research Steve Irwin and what he did for the world. He did an excellent job teaching all of us about wildlife. And his family still showcases several amazing species that they keep at the Australia Zoo. It's very informative, very important information, especially with conservation efforts. So when you're looking at different types of animals, TV shows like that really help to kind of give an understanding of the animal that you're wanting to keep. There are also channels like the Discovery Channel or maybe Animal Planet that kind of give you a different idea of all sorts of animals that you could keep in your care. So the fourth resource for research is a big one, and this is physical sources. This can be a combination of family members, friends, acquaintances, expos, or conventions that you can go to, just basically people with experience with that animal. These are the types of people who have hands-on experience with that animal and can answer several questions that you may have. These resources are also a really great way to go and see and handle the animal for yourself, so you can make sure that you are still fully interested in them. If you have a friend or a family member with that animal, you can go and visit them several times just to become like comfortable handling and interacting with that animal. And the same goes for like expos and conventions. You can see so many different types of animals, you can handle them, you can ask questions, you can watch their movements and their behaviors and see if that is an animal that you would like to own. Again, at expos and conventions, you have to watch out for mass breeders or vendors who could potentially be selling wild caught animals. And one last tip, if you live in an area where that animal is frequently seen in the wild, you can just step outside at different times of the year and kind of gauge how that animal would live. But of course, if you don't live in an area where the animal naturally resides, just make sure that you research their natural habitat and look into their climate and environment throughout different times of the year so that you can try and match that husbandry within your home. Now, of course, we won't be able to match the husbandry exactly, but it'll give you a general idea of the different types of year, the different seasonal changes, and see if you can try and mimic that to the best of your ability. So now that we've talked about the different ways that you can go about researching an animal, I want to talk about how I personally go through the process. First of all, I use every single one of these resources when finding information about the animal that I want to keep. And when I go through all of my searches and readings, I like to break down each section of care into categories like temperature, humidity, nutrition, enclosure size and setup, their behavior and temperament, just everything that goes along with animals. And then as I'm going along, I will write down what each resource had to say about that particular category. And then I make a decision on what I want to do based on what the most common number or method was, sort of a middle ground. And I do that for each category until I have a full rundown of what I plan to do for my animal. And of course, once I get the animal and my care begins, I use the numbers and methods that I decided on when doing my research, and then I just make changes if I need to, because there's always going to be a generalized way of caring for an animal, but I do believe that every animal is an individual, and so until you have them in your care and you see kind of how they are and what their preferences are, you can't really know if that's the correct care. So I always like to get the animals in, pick kind of a generalized way of caring for them, and then watch their reactions and kind of gauge what their preferences are and make changes as I go along. I personally tailor my animals' care to them specifically. So yeah, that's basically it for how I research an animal. I hope that this helps you guys in your researching an animal loving journey. Just keep in mind that it will be pretty difficult to only trust one source. So it is extremely important to research multiple sources, especially those credible sources and people who have real, true, successful experiences with those animals. Any animal, especially exotic animals, have very specific care and they deserve specific care. They deserve to be given as much as we possibly can give them. You know, you can love and appreciate an animal all day long, but if you don't provide them with what they need to successfully thrive in life, then you're not loving them enough. So definitely do as much research as you can, use these tips that I've given you today, and good luck with your animal keeping. So that's it, guys. That's all I'm gonna have for you today, sharing my tips on how to research an animal and going through the process that I use when preparing for my animals. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, please give us a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button on your way out. I really appreciate it. Also hit that notification bell so you can know when I upload next, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!